Hey guys, Weiss here. Welcome to another video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It is super helpful. Got a fun topic today. Going to be talking about the 5 strangest questions I've ever been asked in the geek arena. I've been around comic book conventions, video game conventions for many years. I used to own a couple of comic book stores in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've worked at comic book stores. I've done a ton of shows and all this kind of stuff. And from time to time, I get a question that just strikes me as odd, and I want to share this with you guys. I think you'll enjoy this. Kind of a funny video today, but we're just having some fun. All right, the number 5. I'm going to count these down. They're the 5 strangest questions, and I'm going to count down 5 to number 1. And number 1 is really strange. All right, number 5. I was at Retropalooza. I was set up there as a vendor, selling my books, autographing books, and all that kind of stuff. And I sell a lot of other stuff as well. Toys, action figures, video games, just all kinds of stuff, including paperback books, movie tie-in books, video game books. Just want to have extra copies just to make a little extra money. And this kind of stuff sells pretty well at Retropalooza. And those are paperbacks. And I was talking to a customer, looking at, the stuff on my table, and I say paperback. Well, this is a one-word question he asked me. He looks at me kind of odd. This guy was probably, 15, 16, 17. And he goes, paperback? Like with a big question mark in his head, I suppose. Paperback? And that really struck me, the age gap and the generation gap. He had no idea what I was talking about when I said the word paperback. In the age of digital technology and reading everything digitally on your phone and, ebooks and this and that, he hadn't heard of a paperback, apparently. I know a lot of households these days don't really even have any books in their house. Everything is online or digital or whatever. And he just looked at me with his quizzical face, paperback. And that just struck me as odd. And a lot of kids growing up today don't even know what, they may not even see books in their home. And most, they might have a few hardcovers lying around, or they may just not even know the terminology of paperback. This is a mass market sized paperback, these smaller books that fit in your pocket. And this is a trade paperback. Plug alert. All right, that was number 5. Number 4, I set up at shows a lot, like I said, selling my books and everything. And I will be at my table. And now this question, this isn't just a one-time thing. I get asked this a lot, which is just kind of blows my mind. So I'm at my booth, and I'm standing behind my table. I've got stacks and stacks of books, 11 books, different books that I've written. And I've got banners and signs and flyers and business cards. I've got my name on my shirt with pictures of my books. And there'll be somebody standing there, a customer comes up to the table, just kind of browsing, looking around, thumbing through the books, looking at me, saying hello and all that stuff. And I'll talk to him about the book, one or more books or whatever the case. And sometimes we'll have an extended conversation. And at some point during the conversation, they'll say, "You mean you wrote these?" Or something, some variation on that. And I just said, "Yep, that's me here in the flesh." To me, who's been surrounded by books my whole life and in the book world for a very long time and all this, when I see an author set up with his books for sale, I immediately get that. Now, I get that in a gaming convention where maybe people hadn't been around people autographing their books. They don't really get the context right away or pick up on what's going on right away. So I kind of get it, but it still strikes me as odd. Did you write these, since I'm a walking billboard for the books I write? Overly so sometimes, I'm sure some of you guys will say. Anyway, so did you write these is number 4. Number 3, now this one really blew my mind, and it actually seemed a little bit insulting. Number 3 is, do you get paid to write for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram? Telegram, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. This was the major metropolitan newspaper in Fort Worth for many, many years. And I wrote for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram for about a decade. And this couple friend of ours, the husband of the couple, we're talking to them, and they're locals for a very long time. They lived in the Fort Worth area, and the Fort Worth Star-Telegram is an institution. At one point it had over 1 million subscribers. When I was writing for them, They had well over 200,000 subscribers, plus a very strong online presence. And he said, do you get paid to write for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram? Now, keep in mind, I didn't just write for them occasionally. And he knew this. I wrote for them constantly. My articles appeared there all the time. And I wrote so many fun features. Like I wrote about Kiss when they were coming to Dallas. I wrote about the Justice League movie, just a big feature on, talking about, little mini bios on each character. So to get people up to speed, I did video game previews. I wrote about local gaming culture, and on the spring game guide, 50 years, half century of Star Trek, and on and on and on. You get the idea. I wrote continually, constantly for the Star-Telegram, for which I was compensated very well. Now, I know there is some free writing that is done for free, and I do it from time to time myself, just to promote myself or to support a project or whatever. But this was my job. I had 2 young kids in the house at the time, and I was a full-time freelance writer, and I wrote for a lot of different magazines, and the Fort Worth Star-Telegram was my primary outlet, along with Antique Week, for a long time, for about a decade. And it just seemed very bizarre that he would ask me if they paid me to write. I was like, and I wanted to, later you always think of something to say. I would have said, well, do they pay you at your job? But I didn't. I just said, yeah, they pay pretty well. So that was number 3. Do you get paid to write for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram? That just seemed crazy since it was, such an institution of Fort Worth. And since writing was my job. Number 2, back in the 1990s, early 90s, I owned a couple of comic book stores with my brother-in-law, and it was called Fantastic Comics and Cards, and this was in the Fort Worth area. And I'm working there one day, and see, growing up, to just give you a little context for this, working at a comic book store was my dream job. As a little kid, I just thought that would be so amazingly cool, just surrounded by comic books every day, all day, and to be able to read all these anytime you want. That just sounded amazing to me. And this kid walks in with his family, a couple of kids and their parents, and these kids are obviously into comics, and they like superheroes and everything, and they're milling about and everything, but before they leave, the kid goes, "Isn't working here boring? I'm in a comic book store surrounded by superheroes, people coming in talking about superheroes and, movies and geek culture and all that stuff. And I'm loving it. It's so much fun." And he said, "Isn't working here boring?" And this was a kid probably about 9 or 10 years old. And I suppose some people would consider working at a comic book store boring because it's not, working on top of a mountain or something, or in a nightclub or something outside or something more exciting, depending on them. But this kid was into comics, and I was obviously very much into comics. But I just thought that was strange. Coming from a kid who was into comics, he thought that working at a comic book store would be boring. That just seemed like an odd question to me. That was number 2. I don't know where working on top of a mountain came from. That was just off the top of my head. Whatever. All right, and number 1, this is the real doozy. I was at the Classic Game Fest in Austin back in 2018. I was invited out as a guest author, and I can't remember if I did a panel that year or not, but regardless, I was a guest author there, set up with all my books and everything, autographing, meeting fans and all that kind of stuff, talking to readers, talking retro gaming, and a guy comes up. He seemed really interested in what I was doing. More so in the writing aspect of it than the gaming, but he was into both. He was just really interested in my writing career, asking me all kinds of questions about what I do, how long I've done it, how I got into it. He seemed really, really interested, and it was really cool. I had a great conversation with him. He seemed like a normal guy, just normal clothes. He seemed articulate and intelligent. He was asking me all these questions. And then he goes, just out of the blue, "Can I touch your arm just so I could say I did?" And the picture I'm using for the thumbnail here for this video is the picture I took of myself and posted on social media right after this happened, because I was just so dumbfounded by this strange question. Can I touch your arm just so I could say I did? Well, when he asked that, I was taken aback a little, but then I just reached out my hand to shake his hand, just reached out to shake his hand, and he brushed it aside and placed his hand on my forearm. He just kind of which was really creepy. It kind of gave me the creeps. And I was like, okay, thanks for stopping by. And the real kicker was this guy that was fascinated with my writing career, that seemed interested in my books. The real kicker of this was, of course, he didn't buy anything. All right, there you go, guys. The 5 strangest questions that I recall being asked of me during my long geeky career as a store owner, comic book manager, blah, blah, video game writer, book writer, and all that kind of stuff, convention attendee and vendor, guest, blah, blah, blah. All right, let me know in the comments, what's the strangest question that anyone's ever asked of you in any context, at your job or anywhere? Let me know in the comments, what's the strangest question anybody has ever asked of you? All right, guys, thanks for watching. Thank you for hitting that like button. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. I really, really appreciate it. You guys are awesome, and we will talk to you in another video.